Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gebauer.
I'm Greg Lambert.
So on today's episode, we are joined by Carolyn Austin, Director of Practice Innovation at K&L Gates, as well as Brendan McDonnell, partner at K&L Gates. And joining Carolyn and Brendan is Abdi Shayesteh, CEO at AltaClaro. Welcome all to the Geek in Review.
Hello.
Thank you.
So, Abdi, do you mind, before we dive deep into this conversation, can you give us a general overview of what AltaClaro does and what kind of unique value it brings when we talk about legal education?
Sure. By the way, thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Greg, for having us. Really excited to have this conversation. Yeah, AltaClaro is an experiential learning platform, a simulation-based training platform for lawyers. All of our courses have been designed by practitioners, for practitioners, really with one goal in mind, and that's to get legal professionals practice ready. And what we mean by that is that when anyone goes through any one of our courses, you're going to learn by doing. You're going to work on simulated assignments taken from real-world documents. You're going to work on them. You're going to receive feedback on that from our vetted practitioners, as well as some real-time feedback. But it's all designed to give you that confidence, empower the associate or the legal professional to own their career trajectory, to have dress rehearsal to practice and make mistakes, and as well as to make things efficient for the firm when it comes to training. Less time spent on training because the foundational teachings have been put in place through us, and now the firms can build on top of that. Less time correcting mistakes, more efficient mentoring conversations. It all was something I wished I had. As I mentioned, Greg, I started early in my career at King & Spalding. And early on, you realize you become a better practitioner through practice. More assignments, more feedback you get, the better you become. And the spectrum of assignments you get as well, the better you become. And even in those mentoring sessions, those senior lawyers lean in when you come in with good questions, when you know the terminology at least, and have some understanding of something. And so that was the impetus behind it, sitting in my office at 1185 Avenue of the Americas. Look, 11 o'clock at night as a third year, wish I had this thing. And so
I was gonna ask you what bad thing happened to us at King & Spalding that made you decide to really need to focus in on the training.
Well, I was very grateful that I had someone down the hall, a couple of people. You may remember Andy Metcalf, a partner, really generous with their time to give me feedback, to spend some time with me. But I realized not everybody had that access. And that sometimes, because it's just a matter of deal flow or economic environment you're in, or sometimes unconscious bias, same people get the same deals over and over again. And so people could be left out. And so I got lucky to have that access, but I realized that that not everybody had that, and that's what was also the drive behind creating AltaClaro, to create that space.
So, Abdi, you've just mentioned how AltaClaro's experimental learning model has been, a game changer for many lawyers. Can you share some specific examples of how the learn, do, review method has helped lawyers in real-world scenarios, especially in relation to your prompt engineering and supervisory classes?
Yeah, sure thing. And maybe just take a step back to explain what Learn, Do, Review is.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our courses, and we have 60 of them that cut across a variety of practice areas, corporate, capital markets, real estate lending, litigation, as well as professional development, to Gen AI training and even writing courses. But all of those courses have the same three key pillars: learn, do, review. The outset of a learner's journey, they're going to watch an hour's worth of pre-recorded bite-sized videos. These are 7 to 10 minute segments. In between the segments, there's a set of assessments and small exercises to apply quickly what they've learned and get feedback. They do this self-paced, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes every other day. But when they're done with that, the next thing that happens is the most important part. It's the doing part. That's when inside the portal, they're now going to get a simulation assignment taken from real world documents, real world matters. There's a fact pattern based from the real world. Here's your client. They're about to engage in this transaction. You're the associate on the matter. Here are the issues. Here are the tasks. even the documents you need to synthesize. So for deal lawyers, it might be an email from a client, a term sheet, a due diligence memo, even a precedent form that's imperfect from a past deal that's in the office box. They got to go in, find some good provisions, come back and mark up their document. That assignment self-paced. Shouldn't take him more than 2 hours, but it's going to be a challenge. It's not going to be straightforward, but it's good building critical thinking skill muscles. They work on that. They submit it in the portal and they get ready for the third part, the review, which is a pre-scheduled live review session. And that's when they come in to meet with one of our vetted practitioners to go over the assignment, ask questions. The instructor's going to ask them questions, really to get to the whys and hows of what they need to do for that assignment. Now, we run these in small groups of 10. So even when a firm has 100 participants, we'll break them up into 10 cohorts of 10. And that's because the instructors will review the assignment. They're going to see what people missed. They're going to see what they got right and give them feedback in that live session based on the trends they saw. So associates will get feedback. The associates also get a model answer for them to reflect to see. So this learn, do, review really gives them, that assignment they would normally see. They would get feedback on it. Then they get to talk about it in the sessions. And it continues to build as you move. It's not a one and done. There's a variety of assignments that we build a curriculum for. But associates have told us what this has done for them and other learners who have gone through our programs is it's not going to make you a rock star, but it will do three things. One, to be able to raise your hand with confidence to do that assignment. 98% of those get delegated to you, but when you raise your hand to want to do something, that's when you shine. So that's what we focus on. Two, to have more context, especially to be able to ask the right questions. A lot of those assignments come in at 4:00 afternoon. Next thing you know, it's 11 o'clock at night. And you're like, should have asked these questions. So this really helps you formulate those questions so you spend less time. And that's the third thing, more efficiency, spending less time spinning your wheels instead of 10 hours staring at the screen. What am I supposed to do with this? And, where do I start? Now you know where to start. You know you've seen this before. You're going to spend maybe 4 hours on it. So that's the goal on the associate side, but it really empowers the firms to have better internal training sessions and mentoring sessions to build on top of it. They don't have to start from ground zero to explain something. Folks come in prepared and it becomes more engaging and more dynamic in those sessions. A lot of efficiencies created in the firm. Now, in the context of the prompt engineering course, same thing. One of the challenges we hear from firms across the AmLaw 200 is how do we get the attorneys into the tools to actually use them in their workflow and actually start to apply it in their use cases? Well, our course is an immersive framework where you have to get in the tool in order to go through the course. And you're going to, as you go through those exercises, pull up your tool, have small fact patterns that are like, something you would see as a lawyer or a legal professional, like I'll draft and review a provision of confidentiality using the GPT or any other tool that your firm might be wanting to use. So they got to get in the tool. They got to input, see what the output is. And now it says, well, what's wrong with this? How can we make this better? Now let's iterate. Let's go back and keep prompting. So in the journey, you're going to get small opportunities to exercise the types of things you would normally have to do. And then at the end, you're going to get an assignment. And this is really where our partnership with K&L Gates has been invaluable because of the feedback we heard about how to tailor these assignments for different roles. So we have assignments for litigators. We have an assignment for transactional lawyers, and we have an assignment for allied legal professionals. And it's going to be a self-paced assignment, but they're going to have to use that tool to finish it. Dive into it, synthesize, use the tool, make mistakes, turn it in, and then they're going to get into that live session and go over it. And everybody's had a different answer, which is awesome because that's now you're going to talk about, well, I got this, or I got that, and now it gets really interesting. So that in the context of prompt engineering, and then again, because of K&L Gates, the feedback we heard is, well, we ought to have one for partners and supervisors, which brought us to the course that we just released. And that was, again, getting close to the use case of how the tools are being used and where training needs to apply. So we're going through situations and scenarios with these partners and managers, but how to design a workflow that will incorporate both human and Gen AI tools and analysis, how to deal with errors that come up and to deal with the associate or the legal professional, how to even put into a workflow a Gen AI tool we know is imperfect, but how do you build that workflow to mitigate the imperfection? It's all designed around getting the partners engaged to supervise and also design the workflow and deal with situations that come. And then at the end of that, they're going to have to do an assignment, small assignment, but they're going to have to create a best practices checklist on deploying a framework for supervising and managing Gen AI tools for their legal staff, something they use right away for their practice. So hopefully that was a good sort of example of how we get people in the water.
So, Brendan, I don't know if you could tell there's a little bit of passion, I think, in what Abdi's doing. But, I understand there that K&L Gates, that, there's a big focus on the firm for innovation and education. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of that, where your focus is on innovation and education for across the board, and also how did that then lead you to working with Abdi?
Okay, great. And I'll start with, the history has a long tradition of innovation, and we are the Gates is part of the Gates, the Bill Gates that we all know. His dad's law firm basically is part of our firm now, and that's who we are. And going back in time when there was some significant litigation and you had tons of emails to go through, whether it was antitrust litigation or whatever, we needed a program to actually go through and try to figure out which emails were germane to like a discovery request. So we came up with one of the first e-discovery platforms called a 10X. So just by the nature of that client, it made us, be creative. It made us realize innovation was a huge part of who we had to be to service them. So that's where it started. We eventually, we won a large patent case in 2016 with CMU, 2015 maybe. And in that, we talked to CMU about what could we do for them. And we agreed to sponsor, to fund a fellowship. It's like more of a professorship in AI and ethics. And that seat still exists today. And there are a number of programs that are run out of that. So we've always believed that innovation and looking forward is extremely important for our clients and for our lawyers and allied professionals. As time went by and was clear, we had a lot of changes over the last, 20, 30 years in the legal profession, but nothing like Gen AI. And as we saw that coming, and we saw it about 18 months ago, I went to the firm, Carolyn went to the firm, and somebody else, Chris Valente, who's not here, went to the firm. We together basically said, listen, something's got to be done here. We've got to come up with a task force and really start to be prepared, because we think this is a game changer and something much different than we've seen in the past. So that was sort of the genesis of how we began. And that became the AI Solutions Group. And our job was to figure out quickly, what's coming and what do we need to do about it. And it wasn't long before we realized that this technology was significant and was a game changer. We also saw a lot out there about hallucinations and things that cause a lot of concern. The lawyers, by their nature, are extremely critical. They're thoughtful. They're a little hesitant, and that's good. That's probably by what is required to be a great lawyer. And so we knew right off that they weren't going to embrace a new technology that's creating hallucinations and citing the wrong court cases. But we saw something much more than that. We saw a lot of development in the technologies and a lot of good solutions out there, and some really incredible solutions. And so we realized that this is going to be the wave of the future. But the only way to get our people there, the only way to change a law firm, which is slow to change, as I call it the race of the turtles. You have to be faster than the other turtle. But with that, we knew that education and training had to be the cornerstone of the change. And, we began to immerse ourselves in, well, how do we do this? And it brought us to AltaClaro, because we had a long time partnership. I want to say it goes back 10 years. Abdi, how far does it go back? How long? Maybe not
2019.
5 years. Okay.
2019.
I doubled it because it's It feels so long and
First
great.
client.
That's right. Yeah.
K&L Gates was
So,
the first AmLaw 100 client. Yeah.
yeah. So we brought in Abdi to do a training program for our corporate lawyers, and that wasn't the litigation wasn't necessarily the impetus there. It was a realization that sometimes you don't do things as well as others, and education and training, as far as like what I call real formal program, it's there's nothing like having pros. I mean the learn, do, review, and the way that Abdi has kind of come up with, and his team has come up with this formula. It sort of is. It's just so well designed for lawyers, and they do it so much better than we do it. And there's things where we're going to train internally, of course. I mean, lawyers are good at training on some things, but when you really want to get something in depth, you really want to have a really good teacher and program that that's it's super important to make sure that they walk away learning something. You really have to go into the pros makes a lot of sense. And then we doubled down on that as soon as we saw that Gen AI was going to be big. We went to Abdi, and I'm on the legal ethics committee for the Oregon State Bar. So I was very keen on the ethical rules and the duty to supervise. And, as we quickly jumped into, we got into prompt engineering. That was the first part. And that was something where, we really, everyone putting their toe in the water. And we had such a great experience with Abdi and his team, and they were so creative. And so they received feedback so well that, it was just a great partnership. But, with the legal ethics rules coming out, we imagined that the supervisory role was huge, because there's a duty of competence, there's a duty of confidentiality, there's a duty to supervise, there's a duty to charge a fair fee. All those things, all those concepts need to be brought to bear when using AI. And for our partners who are hesitant, go back to that, they're careful. Having a program is super important to them. Having something where they can rely on, an outsider that's helping them through it, and give them that confidence, because these tools are only going to be used by people with confidence. It's like I hate to say it, it's like a child. You watch a child when they first learn something, they're slow to it, and they kind of hesitate, but then they get in there, they go all in. And we've kind of trying to create that same environment at K&L. So that's why we did. And I'll let Carolyn probably could add to that, but I'll let you run the interview, Greg. That's your job.
I do have a question for Carolyn. So, with AI becoming more prevalent in legal practice, what do you see as the challenge for partners and managers when it comes to integrating generative AI in their workflows? And how does I think this is a new Gen AI supervisory course that you have, how does that address those challenges?
It's a great question, and thank you for having me, Marlene. I'm going to answer that in two ways. I'm going to talk about the challenges, and I'm also going to talk about the opportunities, so both sides of the coin, to build on what Brendan has said by way of introduction. But I think one of the biggest challenges that we saw, and we tried to step into the shoes of our people and think about what they needed to know and how they might be feeling, which is really important. And one of the things that we thought was, wow, if I'm a senior partner and I'm managing a team of associates and allied professionals, and I'm looking at introducing generative AI into my practice, because I understand that there will be opportunities here and I want to be able to improve my client service, I'm going to need to understand how I do that securely. And I'm going to need to understand how I do that with the ability to make it as easy as I can for my team to be able to get on board as well. So when we talked about this with Abdi, and by the way, we had actually already run a number of the AltaClaro prompt engineering sessions with our lawyers by then. And so with that, as well as the corporate law training that Abdi referred to, we had a decent understanding of the way that AltaClaro approached things and the learn, do, review. And we thought that would be a great fit when we looked at this particular training need for partners. And it was around those objectives that Abdi just outlined. It's about building confidence. It's about understanding how you can ask good questions sooner, and it's how you can build efficiency. And so all of those things we thought were just a great fit for this. So we tried to build in, working with Abdi and the team, a really good range of those challenges that we thought partners would come up against when they're looking at how to do this. And so they included everything from how do I even make sure that I have the right training in place for my team so that they are ready for these changes? How do I make sure that I understand what the obligations are on me as a practitioner? And Brendan just went through some. And sometimes, of course, it goes even broader than that. There are state restrictions, there are court restrictions, there are even sometimes individual judge restrictions. So you've got to get across a wide gamut of that. So that's one challenge. You also have the challenge of being able to understand enough about the technology without being overwhelmed. We saw a lot of training in the early days on generative AI, Marlene, and it was putting lawyers through, this is how a neural network works. They did not need to know it, I mean, they might have been curious and interested, and there are certainly some partners who live for that stuff, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. What they really needed to know was enough to understand how they could assess the risks and the opportunities. So they needed to know the difference between a public system and a closed system and what the relevant risk profiles were for those. They needed to be aware of when they were supervising work that was given to them by an associate that they needed to review and check before it went out the door to a client. They needed to know what kind of a system it was built on so that they could calibrate how they were going to supervise on that. They needed to understand enough to be able to do their job, but they didn't need to go in there, didn't need a PhD in neural nets. So that was the first thing. And I think it's always with any change management initiative, right, with any adoption project, you really need to be thinking about not only the logistical challenges, but also the human challenges. What motivates us as human beings to be able to get on board with a new initiative? And how do we make sure that we make that pathway as easy as we can for the leaders of the firm who ultimately are going to be so critical to driving that adoption? And that's not just in our firm, that's every firm.
Yeah, true.
I'm just wondering, Abdi, have you focused on non-legal practice specific training with other modules that you have? And so was this something that you were able to look at and adapt some of the previous training onto and plug in Gen AI into this in a way that you've had experience, and it could be management, change management, any of that. Were you able to kind of leverage previous experience and modules to take on this idea?
Yeah, no, that's great, because originally we started teaching substantive courses in practice areas. And then I would say this was the first time where we really deployed a course that went beyond just attorneys and into allied legal professionals. And I would say, thanks to K&L Gates, because they have a very inclusive approach to their training that at all levels. And they were going through our prompt engineering in different roles, from junior associates to senior associates to partners and everything. And through that experience, they were giving us feedback in real time where we need to make adjustments. And we realized quickly, because the original version, the assignment was just for someone who was an attorney or was about to be an attorney. And we said, well, no, we ought to create one that's for allied legal professionals that doesn't require legal knowledge, but it would be an assignment that they would normally do that lands on their doing research to figure out best practices for remote office for the firm and coming up with a policy, something like that. And I have to really give credit to Patricia Libby, our executive editor, who's our head of curriculum, who has a team, assembles a team of educational designers and subject matter experts, and work closely with Carolyn, Brendan, and team to get all these things right by testing, iterating, and getting feedback. So we definitely use the same principles of getting people into the water. It just was the, different water for different folks, and getting that personalized feedback to them at scale but though the adjustments were about sort of who's going through it.
So, Brendan, we talked about the desire that you have for innovation. I'm really kind of curious. We've been talking as an industry a lot about the effects that generative AI will have on the practice of law and kind of shaping how firms go forward. And it sounds like you and Carolyn and others are kind of helping to where you want K&L Gates to go. But when it comes to partners can be a little bit of a different animal, especially when it comes to training. So how has this program been received by the partners there at K&L Gates?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think some are so gung ho that they can't wait and they want to try something new. It's like I hate to go back to the kindergartners. There's like 3 or 4 of them that just jump on the new toy, right? And we have them, and we have those that stand back, right? And they wait. And the good news is, we have what we call created what we call a power user group. They're called pugs. And I basically give them a pug, which is it's actually a pug with a rainbow, like, I don't know what it is, sweater on, that I send out if they become a pug. And it's become quite the valued medallion or whatever that you can get if you are successful. But the idea is that we want these people that have really jumped in there, that really want to learn, from partners to associates, whoever they may be, so they can spread the word and also make it easier for people. So, we have the mixed bag, as you could guess. I do think that we're getting by the initial issue was some said, don't touch it, right? Don't touch the stove. It's hot. You'll burn your hand, right? And eventually you learn that you can boil water on the stove, right? Or you can do a lot of things, right, for the stove. So I think we're past the initial stage. So I think people even our most senior partners realize it. We do a lot of demos. We show them what can be done, and a lot of them expected it to make a bunch of mistakes, and we show them some of the programs we've licensed that they don't. And they have to vet the work, of course. That's part of their duties, part of the courses that we teach them. That's part of the curriculum. But in reality, it's a very advanced system, and I think they see it's changing them. And I think that they're happy that we're leading the charge and we're organized, and we're not leading the charge in such a way that we're way out there. We're definitely we have a good gate. We are definitely in the forefront, but we're not just, we're not being ridiculous. We know we can't bring our partners along unless we're thoughtful and we've got a great program. But education is at the front of that. Carolyn, you want to add to that?
Sure. I wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the kinds of strategies that we've looked at to try to foster an environment that really supports innovation, and particularly dwell a few on some change management issues around that, if that's okay, Marlene. I'll step into that area. So I think the things that I see are part of the secret sauce that we've managed to put together so far, and certainly we are on a journey and we have a long way to go and a lot to learn, but I think the learnings that we've had so far would include, first of all, it's great to start in our firm because we do have that culture of innovation that we're pretty proud of. And Brendan talked about a few of the reasons why we are where we are. But it also means things like empowering people to bring new ideas forward is something we started with our idea group, which is our innovation committee, I think about 5 years ago, globally. So there's already that. We've spent some time on inculcating a growth mindset in our lawyers and our allied professionals, and we've run there's a supporting sort of courses around the importance of being open, the importance of being curious, the fact that we will celebrate you if you bring a new idea forward, and that the opportunity's on to do that. So we have some good fertile ground in which to plan generative AI. The AI Solutions Group has been an amazing group. In all my career, I've never had the privilege of working with a greater team. And one of the things that's made that so good is the diversity, the intentional diversity of the team, because it is not limited to partners, although it includes very senior partners like Brendan. It also includes representatives from across our firm and across our practices, but it is very much around including people from the allied professional side of the business, who all have a stake in this and who all will be users of generative AI. And I think the attitude that 100% on 110% bought into hard work around generative AI, so that helps a lot. We're kind of in it together. And then there's the wider network. The AI Solutions Group is one sort of center of that, but we have a nominated AI on in every practice. Some of those liaisons, the working groups around themselves that are focused highly on the practice group that I'm privileged to attend. So we have a communications network that goes around the firm so we can find out what's happening, what are we hearing from clients, what do we need to address, as well as being able to use that network to say, hey, something new's happening, and filter that back out. I think that the third pillar of that is really education. So from the get-go, we kind of thought we need an intentional approach to education around generative AI. And so we've had a multi-tiered approach that includes a foundational layer. So we want to lift everybody's AI literacy in the firm, regardless of where you are, regardless of your role, so that people get to understand what the technology is and isn't, and can engage in conversations about that, driven by the hype that we all hear outside of the firm. And at that foundational level, we've also got particular cohorts. So you've got the summer associates. They really need training in generative AI, and they're really hungry for it and ready for that. They know it's going to be important. Our first years as well is another cohort where we identify and we invest in them, right? So it made sense to look at then above that, obviously policy, compliance, and ethical standards, really important one to bed in across the firm. And then we have our expert training across that. And, one of the things we found with the prompt engineering training that Abdi does is people get a lot more out of it if they've already had to play with their generative AI tools, because they then kind of get it. They understand more than theoretically why it's important to get good at prompting. So that kind of comes into that specialist layer. And the supervisory layer just fits into that multi-tiered strategy really nicely to be able to get to those educational requirements that we identified for that partner layer. And then there's a lot more to it, but that's broadly it. And you can tell that I've got just as much passion when I start talking about
Exactly.
it. I am going to stop. But I mean, those things I think were really helpful, because then when you're introducing a new tool, people have a context for it. And people have somebody they know. Our pugs that Brendan mentioned, that's a whole network of folks out there who are really our generative AI ninjas. They're there to be able to say, oh, let me show you how to do that. I've done the following, with those things in my practice has been really helpful. And that peer-to-peer learning is great. We're running clinics at the moment, which is also peer-to-peer, where people can come together and go, I'm having trouble knowing how I can use generative AI more effectively in this particular circumstance. And they can solve that together. So it is multi-layered, and with all of that, none of which happens overnight. And by the way, we're very grateful to our leadership for supporting all of that. It just helps. It just helps to move to the next step.
Carolyn, you mentioned something that in you were talking about it was better for the people going through the training if they had had some kind of personal experience using the generative AI tool before they show up in the initial training. And I know there was some reactions last year, especially after the New York lawyer citing the fake cases, that really, I think there were some firms, especially on the security side and ethics side, that kind of quash some of that enthusiasm a little bit.
Double down.
How did K&L Gates, encourage people to use it, but also kind of make sure you're hitting those ethical standards as well, so that when they do show up, they've got that experience, that they're not just starting from scratch, and two, they're not just petrified of using it and feeling like they're going to make a mistake.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I want to clarify because I may not have been clear. The foundational training and in welcome to the product. This is how here's the toolbar. This is where you need to click to be able to do that. That's important, and people have in our firm. It's mandatory to do that training before you can get in and start to play. The second part of our training that is mandatory, and we call it Gen AI Bootcamp, is to be able to do the generative AI policy training. So we take people through what is our policy around use, safe use, correct use, incorrect use of generative AI. They must do that before they can get access to our generative AI tools. So we are not letting them in we're not setting them up to fail, we're setting them up to succeed with that level. But my comment about the prompt engineering was, I can put people through a module on prompt engineering, but if they've never had the experience of being inside a generative AI tool and doing prompting, and they don't really get why it's important. If you've already been in there, though, having done your foundational Gen AI bootcamp, and you're in there and you're starting to prompt for the first time, you soon start to see, oh, I can ask this question 6 times. And what comes out of it is going to be really, really dependent on the way that I ask the question. I need to learn some tools to ask those questions better. Aha, now you're ready to do the prompt engineering course and get hands-on with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
But we'll reel this way that there are a number of people in the firm that are going to go out and get their Chat GPT, like me, pay their $20 a month, and not really put firm stuff through there. They might put a legal question in there, but they're just they're playing, and we want those people. We need those people. We don't want them to put firm stuff in there, right? We've got to have them trained. That goes back to what Carolyn said. But we have gotten the advantage of the fact that there are people that tinker. And those tinkerers are probably our pugs to some degree, right? They really, learn to do that. But it's it also probably helps a little, Greg. I may have a couple of gray hairs. Somebody told me there's a few gray hairs up there. And yeah, exactly. And I think, when I, coming from me, it kind of comes differently. So I've had some senior partners come up to me and said, if this Gen AI stuff is taking over what I do every day, I'm going to quit. I said, well, then pack your bags, because you're gone. And I joke with them, and then I go, no, but I want to sit down with you. I say it, I'm in jest, really. Of course, I like these people, but I then say, let me run you through this. Let's see it. And then they go, well, that's really useful. And a lot of them just have misconceived ideas about it, what it does and cannot do. And I think that's really what's important about it. And I think that to the extent that I'm sort of a senior partner, that helps to speak to those that are and say, listen, guys, you have to get in there and at least understand. That's where that supervisory course comes in. It's designed for people who are supervising, who may not be jumping into that. They may not be the tinkerer. They're not going to be the pugs, but they have enough knowledge about it that they can supervise it and make sure that we're vetting our work. We emphasize our brand. Our brand is huge. If a mistake happens out there, that's really big to our brand. But it's also just showing them that you can supervise this, that the newer people are going to want to use it. They're excited to use it. So let's learn how to use the stove correctly, and let's see what we can bake.
So, Carolyn, you teed up the next question perfectly, talking about the multifaceted training that you have at your firm. And Abdi, I'm going to turn a question over to you now. In terms of training for associates, I'm sure firms have all different approaches to this, and I'm very curious to hear what you are seeing generally. I mean, are you seeing the same devoted multifaceted type of training that we're hearing about here, or are you hearing different things? What's been the response?
Yeah, no, thank you. Great question, because we got our start. We were the first to market a prompt engineering course for legal professionals, 2023 summer, Oric came to us and asked to create this course for their summer associates. They said that they wanted something that was tech neutral, that really trained on critical thinking. And they said they also wanted something that was hands-on, got their hands dirty in the tool to start practicing, which is what we went to market with. And from there, we signed up other firms very quickly, K&L Gates and others. And because of that sort of getting in early, we saw the spectrum of different approaches and different level of where folks were inside firms. So, and I want to talk about that in a minute, but I want to talk about the associate experience and why this has been helpful for them. Because we've been talking about sort of context, giving them context, whether it's partner or junior associate. And that's really what this has started from, was let's get these junior associates into the tool so they can practice using fake client scenarios and they could see what could go wrong. So I know there's the hot stove analogy. I want to use the beer analogy. When you sat down with your parents at 18 and they gave you the beer. You realize,
like this analogy already.
Parents never did that.
It's more fun.
Yeah. You could see what could go wrong very quickly. And that's what this became, was that the associates were now like, oh, I actually see this in the context of assignments. I see that you need a human involved. You need a supervisor involved. You can't just rely on the tool. Otherwise it could go in a variety of wrong places. So it really kind of put things into context, how to use it safely, where it could help you, but it doesn't eliminate what you do or the need for a senior lawyer. So I think that was the brilliance of the firms who went in to approach this and give this to the hands of their junior associates and summers and to train them, while they're doing it. But you're right. Getting in early allowed us to see the spectrum of what I call the tire kickers and the serious firms like K&L Gates. Those tire kickers are still trying to figure it out. Some of them good intentions, but they're kind of stuck in bureaucracy. They have the naysayers, the detractors, and versus the very early adopters, and then the serious ones. Though I see the same theme, this immersive approach. I see this the reason to do it. If you're doing it for summers, it's because in addition to giving them this exposure for safety and ethics, but it's also a recruiting tool that this is a firm that's innovative and will train you and will invest in you. It's also a signal to their clients that we're gonna drive on innovation, we're gonna drive efficiency, and we're taking this seriously. And so you see this seriousness, a tone at the top, where you have in these firms senior leaders like Brendan and Carolyn involved in the training with the junior associates, and it's very immersive across a variety of roles. They also embrace that there's no magic pill to training, that this can't be achieved by just putting people in front of the videos and checking the box, that there's got to be some workout here, and the firm is really around that. And they also see that it's tailored, that you have to have a tailored approach, as what we've done here with the different roles and even different levels. And that's kind of put us in a place where we've even organized the cohorts based on different roles and experience levels, because things can be different for them. And so, yes, those who did dabble and tinker, they get a different experience because now they have a better way to be even better, more effective. And those who are at ground level also get a different experience to start and build on top to get their confidence. So all of these things came from our experience with serious law firms who've taken it in this multidisciplinary approach, this immersive approach, how to plan, whether it was experimentation or deployment and building. And we've benefited from that as well. So anyway,
Abdi, if you could wave a magic wand, is there anything that law schools could be doing better to get the students while they have them better prepared?
Yeah, if they can move faster and make decisions when making a decision, that's their problem. Because
we can't do miracles, I guess.
Well, you said magic wand. You said magic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I did. I stepped into that.
It's magic.
And
magic.
To give credit, we have worked with a few law firms where their deans have been entrepreneurial, or the professor has pushed for this. but yeah, it's limited compared to where you see it inside the firms today.
So I have a follow-up for this. And it probably plays in on law schools. It also, Abdi, it plays in on these scenarios, but sort of with a slightly different bent. So recently we've had Dr. Megan Ma on from Codex, who has basically created a negotiation tool that using a persona that, was trained to help students get through the negotiation process for an M&A matter. And recently I read and I posted about, I think it was the University of Missouri Law School, one of the professors there taking a lot of initiative and moving quickly. She also trained a model to help students learn negotiation in a litigation process. So I'm wondering if there is room for this type of immersive in your education tools moving forward, or any firm's tools moving forward.
Absolutely. And that's the direction we're going, where you do go through simulations and you get feedback. I don't want to take the cat out of the bag, but very soon, that ability.
I didn't even do this on purpose.
Just wait.
But he didn't pay me for it, folks.
I appreciate that. No, because this is the interesting thing. Why the legal industry, we're kind of laggards, right? All this stuff is taking place in other verticals. Like pilots get this pilot simulator. Doctors get to play on, they have simulations they can even do. So we too need to have this real-time simulation where you're negotiating with personas, leveraging AI, leveraging Gen AI. And we have built that in where now associates are going to get individual feedback on their assignments. But even going out further, where imagine if you had a library of simulations that reacted based on how you did and the level of difficulty changed each time. It's kind of like choose your own adventure. You can start to throw in more wrenches in their workflow, see how they deal with that to build their critical thinking skills. So I think what they have done is exactly what we need to be doing, is to transform the way we're going about education in our industry. The more practice, the better you become. So let's create that environment where you can practice safely and go at it in the shallow end before going out into the deep end.
I'm almost thinking you can customize it for firms. Like if there's a particular partner whose style you want to emulate, you want people to emulate, you could do something like that customized for
I'm going to call you.
Can I just add? Yeah, we're going to talk.
Yeah.
Can I add something there to that, which is that, the introduction of not only generative AI, but of innovation in law schools is so critical. And, it's so exciting to see those undergraduate subjects coming up, and it's good to see them also at graduate level. What I wanted to add is we're part of a legal ecosystem, folks. And if we get better law students through the door, yes, law firms, then our job is easier. And we then build on that and grow their skill set when they're with us. We have, if you consider all of the parts of the legal ecosystem, which includes courts, judges, regulatory authorities, it includes government, right? All of those parts are dealing with the introduction of generative AI and are grappling with what that means. And I think we do need to be outward facing, and to some extent, as we're going through this journey ourselves, and think about how we can, advance the legal ecosystem generally for the benefit of the community that we serve. And to that end, Brendan and I have been really looking at the potential for using artificial intelligence for access to justice as well. And we have been able to be one of the foundational sponsors, actually, of an event that's coming up in the next couple of weeks, held at Stanford Law School through their legal design labs, to bring together various people from different parts of that legal ecosystem who are involved in serving the community beyond the dollar. And bringing together those people who want to give of their time and their expertise to be able to think, how can we make sure that artificial intelligence is going to be something that is not going to leave people behind? So uh, I get very excited about the prospect of doing that.
Well, that I think tees us up nicely for the last question for everybody. So we ask all of our guests a crystal ball question. And Brendan, we'll start with you. So what what changes or challenges do you see happening in the legal industry over the next couple of years that we need to face?
I think this can dovetail into the questions that were just being answered about university law schools and getting ready. If you think about it, understanding the solutions, I'm sitting through pilots and demos like every week. And I feel like it's never going to stop because it may never stop for a while, which is there's so much coming out. There's so many different tools that are going to be available to us that we actually have to, being a lawyer is not just about getting to the right answer and understanding how to apply legal principles. It's also picking the right tool and staffing it with the right people. So in the past, it was always, lawyer, associate, everything. There was just a formula. And now, you think about it, you may have some non-legal team members who actually tee up some results from an AI solution that they gave you, and your job is to verify it. So, the whole job may be different. And I think that's a big part of the crystal ball, which is, okay, now how do I get us ready as a firm, that change management, to understand, and this is one of the reasons we came up with the term allied professional in our firm, is that, they're going to be part of the team. They're going to be billing. They're going to be no different than a lawyer, because having the technical person who's there is going to figure out how we're going to take these 300,000 documents and we're going to actually cull through them, find the right information that we have, and make sure that we get all the value, not only the information that might get a transaction to them, but also information that might be valuable to the client for perhaps, extracting at a later date, right? Because it's all of that that's coming to bear on how we provide that value to the client. So I think we're going to face competition from outside consulting firms and insurance firms and accounting firms. It's already happening throughout the world, because they now can slide into our area with these tools. And in fact, we can slide into their area. So you're seeing a lot happen in these different areas. And I think my job, or what I'd like to do, or the crystal ball, is make sure we're ready as a law firm, make sure that our management has the information that they need, make sure our people have the training that we need, make sure we have the right personnel, and make sure we listen to our clients. I mean, listening to the clients and hearing what their needs are and what they're looking for, and then actually trying to make sure that we service those needs in the right way. And that's
Exactly.
So Carolyn, how about you? What kind of changes or challenges do you see?
I am just so glad to be working in this space right now, because I feel excited every day about what's happening and what's going to come. So I'm very optimistic. I think there are three things I just wanted to touch on. And crystal ball gazing is fairly foolish and fraught with peril, but three things. One is, Brendan mentioned clients, and I feel that we're talking about being in a legal ecosystem. Of course, the clients are a huge part of our legal ecosystem. When we talk with clients, we have to meet them where they are on this journey that we're all going through, and some of them are way in advance of us in terms of their uptake of generative AI, and some of them are yet to start. And so I can see immense opportunities for us and for law firms to be able to share our experiences, to listen to what our clients' experiences are, potentially some of the things they may be fearful about or hesitant about, and try to go on that journey together and be very collaborative about that. I think generally collaboration is going to become more and more important. So that's the first thing. The other thing I wanted to mention really quickly is data. We need to become more of a data-driven profession. At the moment, we are still trying to work out, I think, to a large extent, how to gather data, how to engage in metrics, particularly around technology, certainly generative AI. How we measure that? There are some great AI benchmarking initiatives happening around around the traps, which are really good to see and to watch. But I think internally we need to get good at capturing data. And then we're good at capturing data, we need to also get good at managing the data and applying some quality assurance to that data so that we as a profession haven't been great at that, generally speaking. And I think that we're going to see more of that. And thirdly and finally, I think that when we look back on this, I think we're going to be very interested with the kinds of use cases that we saw in 2024 and 2025 as low-hanging fruit. And I think with the benefit of hindsight, we might think, they thought it was all going to be about assisting with routine tasks that lawyers were otherwise doing. Maybe that's not going to be where we see value ultimately. I'm really curious about the higher level thinking kind of use cases for generative AI. How can it make me as a human a better thinker? How can it teach me? How can it engage with and improve my thinking, my critical thinking skills? How can it give me different perspectives than my own and provide me with even greater options than might have occurred to me as an individual? I think that might be really interesting to explore further once we get over that. Yeah, sure, we can use it for due diligence, but what about if we can use it for some things that are a little bit more interesting? Sorry to the due diligence people who find that very fascinating. But there you go. That's my 3 things.
Well, luckily I gave Abdi a magic wand earlier, so unfortunately it looks like he's had some technical difficulties and has dropped off. So we'll just assume that his magic wand is working for the crystal ball section as well. So Carolyn Austin and Brendan McDonnell from K&L Gates, really want to thank both of you coming on and for Abdi for coming on as well and talking with us today. Thank you.
For having us.
For having us. Yes, absolutely. Great conversation. Thank you.
And of course, thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoy the show, share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you, so reach out to us on LinkedIn.
So I will make sure that I put links out for Abdi and AltaClaro, and I'll make sure that those get on the show notes.
And Carolyn and Brendan, where can listeners find out more about your collaboration and training program with AltaClaro?
Well, apart from through Abdi.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn. You try that one. Yeah.
Through Abdi, I'm always happy to take a message. So if anyone wants to email me, I'm happy to talk about it.
Great. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you so much, Jerry.
All right. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Marlene. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Back on the ball.